Hey, you guys, it's Professor Vet, and I am here to give you a little lecture on Stoicism. Now, I know that we were going to do a class tomorrow. I'm recording this Tuesday afternoon. I got into a car accident. Um, I know that we were going to do a lecture on Aristotle tomorrow. The problem was the last lecture on Aristotle I thought went over like a lead balloon, right? I didn't think it was very good at all. In fact, I thought it was pretty bad. I rushed through most of the stuff. And then we had a bunch of time left over at the end, and then we rushed through a discussion of Aristotle and democracy. So my goal here is to give you something that's a little bit different in flavor. It's a little bit less dense and technical, and it might be of some more use to you. So we're going to work on Stoicism, and then when Monday comes around, we'll do a little bit of Aristotle, but we're going to probably start focusing on the materials we need to know for the final. We'll do that on Wednesday. So this material will also be part of your final, and so I just have you take a peek. This is yeah, so that's it. So that's the first thing. Next, I want to point out, we're going to talk about Stoicism today. Stoicism has reached kind of a new level of popularity recently. People have found it extremely useful in terms of its practicality. I remember many years ago, I was dating a girl and I was in Paris, and she had given me a book. And the book was from this guy Seneca, Letters from a Stoic, right here. And she had told me that he was the only philosopher that made any sense to her because he was so practical. And then years later, I remember a classicist telling me that Seneca was famous for his bumper sticker style philosophy. So we're going to just be talking about three Stoics. There are lots and lots of Stoic figures. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca are the only ones that we're going to be talking about. But there are others, and they're all pretty dynamite, and you can find elements of Stoicism in modern culture too. So we're gonna break this down into two parts. Who were they and what did they think? So first up, who were they? The Stoics were a collection of ancient Greek figures. Now, Greek's kind of in quotes because Marcus Aurelius is Roman. He was a Roman emperor, but that cat wanted to be Greek. I'm telling you, he really wanted to. That's why he has a beard. And Seneca was also Roman. But the Stoics tend to start in Greece. And they had kind of similar ideas about emotions and perspective on life and how to sort of practically manage yourself. Now, what did they think? Well, there are some common threads throughout Stoic thought. For one, they all thought that the universe was entirely physical and there wasn't a spiritual substance. For most of them, they thought that the universe was designed by Zeus. You know, Marcus Aurelius is Roman, so maybe he said Jupiter or something. I mean, the point is that the universe had a design. This design was supremely rational, but our own rationality would just be a very small fragment of that, just a little teensy bit. And so we can see parts of this rational order, right, in the seasons and how things have a pattern to them, but we don't get the whole picture of it because we're kind of limited. And because the universe has this big, huge pattern, we might call it mechanistic, meaning it has a way that it is going to be necessarily. You know, the tides are going to come in necessarily, nobody's going to stop them. Now, Stoicism is kind of about freedom from our emotions or being calm in the face of adversity or something like that. And the general idea is that we can control our internal lives, but we can't control the things that happen outside of us. We can't control the nature of the universe. If there's a terrible earthquake tomorrow, there would be nothing that we could do to stop that. We could only control our reaction to things. So we can't control the external world, but we can control our reactions to things. So Seneca is one of our first, and we're not going to do too much with Seneca, but I did want to bring up he had kind of an interesting life. He lived about the time of Jesus. He's very well-educated Roman. He was the teacher of Nero. And now, thematically, well, let me just tell you about Nero. Seneca taught Nero was pretty nasty, and he actually sentenced Seneca to death in front of his own family. And apparently Seneca took it pretty well. Seneca's most well known for his work on anger and how to think about anger and how to respond to it. I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights here. One of them, all cruelty springs from weakness. And secondly, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. And that's similar to another one of his quotes that he says, what matters the condition of your life if you yourself are miserable with it? So, you never know what someone else's life is like. Somebody may be very, very happy. You think they drive a big car, they have a big house, but there may not be a person in the world that loves them, and they may hate themselves and be miserable most of the time. So you shouldn't spend time worrying about being other people. Okay, on to Epictetus. And I gotta say, Epictetus hits me in the feels. I really like Epictetus because I think that, I think he's the deepest. I think he's just a really good philosopher. He's not a metaphysician or anything, but he's very good for thinking about life. We know that he was a slave, and we also know that he was maimed by his master. So his leg might have been broken, or probably was broken or maimed in some way, and that limited his mobility. Now, he did manage to win his freedom, and I think it was, to our best knowledge, it was upon the death of his master. This was something that the Romans would do. It wasn't necessarily always the case, but oftentimes slaves were freed if they could earn back their freedom over a period of many, many years. That wasn't always the case. And then sometimes, too, if the master passed, then the slave would be freed. But that wasn't a guarantee, and it was still obviously a terrible life. And so Epictetus, I kind of sum him up in a couple of important points, but this isn't everything that he has to say. The first one is that you're always going to want more than what you have. Whether it's a new phone, right? I mean, you get your phone, and when you first get it, you're just blown away, and it's amazing. And then, after a while, it's like anything else. And then eventually you want another one. You could be making $1 million a year. And then, within a few years, you'd be like, God, I know it sounds like a lot, but I need a little more. It's just a tendency of your mind to want more. And then number two, always, always, always in life, when you are stressing out about something, somebody at your work, the news, stop and ask yourself, is this something that I can control? Is it within my sphere of influence? If it's something you can do something about, then do something about it. If it's something that you cannot do something about, then disregard it and go about your day. If you ever have to work or live or deal with a toxic person on a regular basis, right? Everybody has these people. Maybe they just don't like dealing with them. They're very difficult. You have to think about their behavior as part of the weather. You don't get upset about the sun or the rain. I mean, you might, but it's nothing that's within your control. And so you shouldn't spend any time wasting away thinking about that. Now, you can see how that would come from a life in which your own liberty is completely ruined, right? It's taken away, it's abrogated. As a slave, Epictetus couldn't control what he did, when he did it, when he ate, when he relieved himself, right? These things were just not available to him. But also, it was not within his power to change it. And so that's very likely the source of much of his philosophy. All right, a couple of quotes. If we think of ourselves as independent, well, these aren't quotes, right? But they're summaries. If we think of ourselves as independent things, then we always think we want to live a long time and we want to grow old and be healthy and stay happy. But if instead you think of yourself as part of a big group, you realize that in any big group, some things are going to be different than others. Take this with regard to the length of life. Not everybody gets to live a long life. And it might just turn out that it's one of us. It is what it is because we are part of a whole, not an individual thing. And so if we think of ourselves as a greater whole, then for the sake of that whole, it is incumbent upon you to get sick at one point, at another to take a dangerous voyage, to die prematurely. Epictetus also, and we won't go into this very much, but he emphasizes social roles and, being a brother, being a mother, being a father, being a sister, being, right, that these kinds of contexts for our lives provide meaning for them. Our identities get expressed through these contexts, and we should take advantage of these contexts to act in meaningful ways within them. All right, a little bit on Epictetus and death. Here we go. Go ahead and tell me that harvesting the grain is ill-omened. After all, it indicates the destruction of the grain, but not the destruction of the cosmos. Tell me that the falling of seeds is ill-omened, or the conversion of grapes into raisins. For all these are changes as to what was there previously into something different. It isn't a destruction, but an ordinary management. Okay, so he says something like this. I mean, you don't see a farmer with his tractor or her tractor out there in the field getting the corn from the threshing machine or excuse me, the wheat from the big tractor, and you don't say, don't cut down the wheat, right? Well, no, it's time to cut the wheat. That's what happens, right? It's not the end of the world, it's the end of the grain, but it's not the end of everything else. When you see a leaf fall from a tree, you don't go, oh my gosh, the leaf has fallen from the tree, right? When a grape turns into a raisin, you don't lose it over the loss of the grape. And so, too, you should feel that way about your own life when you're confronted with death. It's part of a larger pattern here, and you are not the one who chooses how that goes. All right. A little bit on patience. All right, Epictetus. Nothing great is produced suddenly, since not even the grape or the fig is. If you say to me now that you want a fig, I will answer to you that it requires time. Let it flower first, then put forth fruit, and then ripen. Is then the fruit of a fig tree not perfected suddenly and in 1 hour? And would you possess the fruit of a man's mind in so short a time and so easily? Do not expect it, even if I tell you. We always want things quickly, right? We want to get our degree right now, and we want to do these things right now. And we want the car now, and the home now, or the relationship now, or right? We have this demand for instant gratification in our society, right? Amazon's a great example. I could order something now and get it same day. Epictetus is trying to remind us, look, all things take time. You want a beautiful piece of fruit? It's going to take a while to grow that fruit. That's the way it is. If you want to grow your mind, it's going to take a while to grow your mind. It will not happen overnight. You need to be exposed to a variety of disciplines, right? Over a period of time in order to get to those levels. All right. A little bit on desire and craving. To children who put their hand into a narrow, naked earthen vessel and bring out figs and nuts, this happens. If they fill the hand, they cannot take it out, and then they cry. Drop a few of them, and you will draw things out. And do you part with your desires? Do not desire many things, and you will have what you want. So you can imagine a kid reaching a hand into a jar, grabbing a bunch of candy, and then they can't get through the small neck of the jar, right? But if you drop and let some of it go, you can get a couple of things out of there. Well, this is life, right? The Rolling Stones say you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need. Same idea here. Look, you may want a big, huge house and a big, huge car. It might not happen, but you might get a car and you might get a place to live. And if you understand that your wants are always going to be more than what you can get, then you are aware of this and you are content with what you do get, right? Again, the metaphor with the hand in the jar, I think, works pretty well. Okay, this is kind of similar to our other death quote. What happens is you get different fragments from different thinkers, right? So you have like Diogenes, and he'll talk about Epictetus, or you'll get different transcripts of the same work, and they're translated differently, or they're different copies originally in Greek, right? Or Epictetus repeats himself. So this is similar to the farming stuff. Say that the falling of leaves also is of bad omen, and for the dried fig to take the place of the green fig, and for raisins to be made from grapes. For all these things are changes from a former state into other states, not a destruction, but a certain fixed economy and administration. So that was very similar to our other quote. Such is going away from home and a small change. Such is death, a greater change, not from the state which now is to that which is not, but to that which is not now. All right, a little deep there. Shall I then no longer exist? You will not exist, but you will be something else, of which the world now has need. For you also came into existence not when you chose, but when the world had need of you. So there's a lot there. We covered that first chunk before. But he says, look, death is a change, right? Not from that, I hope I can highlight this. Not from the state which now is to that which is not, but to that which is not now. So you're not going from it's just not going to be like it is now. You will no longer exist, right? But you didn't get to pick when you came into the world, and you don't get to pick when you came out. Van Jones said this when he visited the campus a few years ago. He said, you don't get to pick how you go into this world, and you don't get to pick how you go out. This is very similar to Epictetus. All right, our last bloke is Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor. He was one of the 5 good emperors. I think it's 5, maybe it's 4, but I'm pretty sure it's 5. It's like Marcus Aurelius, Minerva, Trajan, Hadrian. Maybe it's 4. Anyway, they were good emperors in the sense that they weren't insane and started randomly killing people. Although don't fool yourself. I mean, these Roman emperors had to do some awful things to keep it all going. What's interesting about Marcus Aurelius is that he wasn't really born a warrior, but circumstances thrust him into these terrible wars in Rome. He had to go and fight these battles with Germanic tribes along the borders, spending winters in tents and stuff like that, when really the guy would have been perfectly happy reading and writing his entire life. And so for that reason, he learned about how you had to react to things and what you had to do to kind of define yourself. The thing that probably Marcus Aurelius, and apart from being one of the good emperors, is famous for is that he made an absolutely terrible decision when it came time to pick his successor. He picked his son Commodus, who, if you've ever seen the movie Gladiator, is played by Joaquin Phoenix in that. Joaquin Phoenix, Commodus is killed in that movie, but he's not killed in real life. And Commodus was crazy, and he thought that he was Hercules. And he really was a big, burly fellow, according to accounts. But he was absolutely terrible as an emperor. He was awful, and he didn't attend to the affairs of state, and was violent, and just killed people and really weakened the empire. So why do I bring this up? Look, nobody's perfect. And Marcus Aurelius was a great philosopher and arguably a very good emperor. But, he still had flaws and still made mistakes. We all do. All right. Marcus Aurelius believed in a rational order to the universe, but he liked to focus on the finiteness of our own life, the fact that we're only going to live a certain time. Something about the flux of reality always interested him, and he stressed this kind of need to think rationally about death. And let's see how many we've got on him. Yeah, just a couple. One of the things that Marcus Aurelius had to deal with on a day-to-day basis as the emperor of Rome was people who were awful, right? Just day after day. I mean, whether this was resolving a dispute or dealing with somebody who was unpleasant and nobody else had the power to deal with, he had to do it. And he would write that, every day we're guaranteed to meet people who are interfering, ungracious, insolent, and antisocial. But that, as humans, we're born to labor together. To work against each other is therefore contrary to nature. So what he's saying is, if you expect every day you're going to run into somebody and they're going to be difficult, they're going to be terrible, whatever, set that for your expectation, and then you won't be surprised by it. I used to feel this way whenever I worked at a movie theater and I had to serve popcorn, and people were just awful. They were just terrible. And I realized one day, at least one person's going to be terrible to me today. And you know what? I was. And so I wasn't surprised when it came up, and I wasn't as emotionally responsive as a result. All right. Last quote, and then you guys will be done. Marcus Aurelius, you must build up your life action by action and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible. And no one can keep you from this. What I think of is that we all have goals in life that we want to reach. And our tendency is to want to do it all now and to make it all happen. And unfortunately, we just aren't able to make it all happen at once. The most that you can hope for is to, task by task, day by day, build and work toward the goal. I remember, even now I feel this way, right? I find out about something or I'm reading something and I want to read every possible book that I can read on it now. And I want to know that stuff now. And I have to consciously tell myself, no, you got to can you read 10 pages today? That's what you can do. You can do 10 pages today. And so that's important to keep in mind that your life consists of a series of small tasks that you are afforded the opportunity to regulate and to manage. And if you do a bit every day, that's as much as anyone can ask because, Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay, try the veal. I'll be here all week. You guys, I appreciate your logging in and checking out this video. It's a substitute. I just feel awful about not being there tomorrow. But we had to get through something. I don't think I've ever missed 3 classes in one semester. So I'm really sorry. And I hope this is helpful. And I will talk to you guys soon. I'll see you on Monday. If you have any questions or concerns, please email me. Thank you guys.